Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. This is Benjamin Breaker Novotny, and I am back with another replay that I took from Complexity's Midday. And this time it looks like he just happened to run across his teammate, TriMaster, the lower right-hand corner of Coda LE. So it looks like finally we are going to have some Zerg versus Terran in some of the replay collections that I have gotten. And in the upper left-hand corner, spawning at roughly the 10 o'clock position, it's gonna be Midday. He did submit this replay for me to take myself. I do apologize that I don't actually have a better observer interface, one that's more aesthetically pleasing to the human eyes. But I'm working on getting that in the near future. I think I can just take the Gallic interface and then integrate it in with Legacy of the Void, but I'm not entirely certain. I haven't tried just yet, so do have a little bit of mercy on me. It's just that I'm a little bit excited to get my hands on these replays and start cranking out some content for you guys. Now, for the time being, it looks like it's going to be a barracks into perhaps command center opener. I've seen triple barracks versus Zerg, and it's very difficult to gauge just what is a viable strategy in the early game when you are playing unranked, and that's exactly what I'm doing these days. I'm playing unranked Legacy of the Void ladder. I actually played against Dragon the other day. He totally face rolled me. It was enough about that. It was maybe I'll give the replay to someone else to cast it, but I feel like the novelty feeling of that is just too it's too novelty. It's not enough pro level Gosu play, if you will. So for the time being, we've got both players out on the map trying to scout each other, figure out where they are, but I'm a little bit curious as to why we had TriMaster send the SCV out here. If I'm not mistaken, this is a map where you're forced to spawn in the opposite position, the complete opposite position of your opponent. Nonetheless, I don't see any reason for TriMaster. I don't really fault him for checking the lower left expansion, I believe is what he was doing. But right now, we got Marines. One thing that I've noticed that is very common in the early game for a Terran versus Zerg, or a Terran versus Protoss for that matter, is it seems as though using Reapers in the early game is no longer viable, simply based on the fact that it takes too long to build them. And it would be so much easier to send a single Marine or an SCV at your opponent to figure out what is coming from them in the early game. Now, in the matchup TVT, that might be a completely different story. Here we go. Midday gets started at a 2-minute 40-second third base. He's got metabolic boost on the way as well in the background, and I feel like TriMaster's got a big window of opportunity to do damage, but he's got to pick up on this adequately. He's going to have to know that there's a third base at the 12 o'clock position of this map. If he doesn't, then he's simply going to, he could lose this outright by simply not knowing that his Zerg opponent went for a ridiculously early third. I'm not going to say ridiculous, not going to say ridiculously early third, but I mean, it's on the table. Zergs are able to do it, but it's something I imagine we should see players be able to catch on to more frequently. And of course, now we do have, what is this coming out from TriMaster? This is a little bit weird. I think the interface went buggy on me. But here it says we got 2 Hellions on the way. So, nothing too terribly wrong here. It's a little bit glitched out, guys. We're good to go for the most part. 3 gases it's going to be for Midday. I'm wondering what he's going to be doing next. Will he be throwing out the evolution chambers? Is he going for layer tech? What is... There it is. Layer tech. I'm leaning towards saying, you know, let's just take this piece by piece and see what he's going to be doing. He's going for layer tech right now. This opens up the possibility of Spire. It also opens up the possibility of Infestation Pit, and with that, we'll see what his plans are. Not try and second guess the game before it actually happens. But now we got Spore Crawlers on the way at each base. Main and the natural more notably. There's no workers at the third just yet. As I say, that one arrives to build a Spore. But that's about it. And I'm wondering what this could be for other than Banshees. Now, we do have Cloak on the way coming from TriMaster, but it's also worth noting that there's already a lot of Queens out on the map. I feel like Queens, excuse me, not Queens, but rather Banshees being used at this stage in the game to harass will be very difficult. They do, of course, have an upgrade that can be used with a fusion core that will allow them to upgrade their range and I believe their movement speed. But 1 versus 4, well, I think we know who wins this fight, guys. So that Banshee's gonna back out, or at least try and back out. Gonna go back in with Cloak now. Finally done. And there's not enough energy on any of those queens to actually get a chance to fuse out. But TriMaster's overextending with that while simultaneously poking forward on creep. This is looking pretty nice. No full wall off here coming from Midday. He's in a lot of trouble now with the natural. Look at the drones getting roasted here in the natural. 16 lings on the way, but they're not going to be done for a long time. The queen's now coming back to defend, but the alien's going straight into the main. They get caught by quite a few lings, and it looks like this might be all but shut down. There's 2 hellions, 2.5 hellions alive now, and this has been shut down. But that costed a lot. God, let's look at the number of workers killed. 11. Add that to the number of lings killed, I guess you could say. That's 20 lings, just about 10 larvae. That's 21 larvae. This is paid for itself. What that trade that TriMaster has just made. Excuse me, hold on, let me get rid of that damn thing. God, get out of here. Get out of here! There we go, I want to see his normal stuff. Here we go. Alright. Let's get the music back online. Blizzard, fix your shit! Sorry, couldn't help it. A little bit of a random yell, but come on, I think everyone wants the music back, right? Oh, and this is such a classic place to camp with a Banshee, it really is. At the bottom of the ramp, intercepting any units that come at you, whether they be drones or lings, even roaches at this stage, adding whatever little peppering damage you can put on them is great. But checking back at home, it's going to be mech coming out from TriMaster. Alright. 4th base on the way. Now that the 3rd base is just about fully saturated. The natural, holy sweet mother of lack of saturation. The natural's in some trouble in that regards. It needs more workers. The 3rd needs more workers. But at this stage, Sam has assessed for himself that his opponent is going mech somehow. I think it was simply the number of hellions that TriMaster threw at him. I mean, that's kind of a tell. Who knows? Maybe they were on Skype talking to each other as they were playing this game. Just, you know, throwing out some friendly smack talk. If I'm not mistaken, TriMaster was at some point on Complexity. I'm not sure if he's active or not anymore, but I believe Team Liquid's Liquipedia actually shows that he is a part of the Complexity roster. Oh boy, detections here. The Ravagers are getting ravaged, however. Corrosive Bile you have to be very careful with because it can do friendly fire. It can cause you some damage. It's like Banelings that you don't want to hug. Oh, the Banshees, okay. And yes, Corrosive Bile does actually hit anti-air. The only problem is you have to make it hit the anti-air. You have to be very good with your micro. Things like that. So it's not perfect. It's more like a skill shot. But here we go. The 4th base is now getting totally roasted by some Hellbats, and that's going to add to the carnage a whole lot more. That is 7 more workers we've seen TriMaster get since the beginning of the game. Midday's taking it. He's taking it, and he's not happy about taking it. He's throwing Corrosive Bile left and right. Those Banshees just dodging it. All they have to do is keep on following these guys, and then they're good to go. But the Queens are now coming back, and they're having a different say in this fight. 3rd base did get set up behind this, and it looks like the 4th and 5th is not too terribly far behind. These, I feel like, most likely will be turned into planetary fortresses. But we'll have to wait and see how the game pans out. Who knows? There could be, how do I say, some point in the meta where it feels breakable or not viable to keep on going with planetary fortresses. These guys, Cyclones, are very, very strong, and they are on the retreat path from these Ravagers, Hydras, and Roaches, and they're just doing so much damage. They move and shoot at the same time. They don't stop. Some of these guys have probably 3 or 4 kills to their name already. Corrosive Bile is meant to shut them down just a little bit. But that attack range, check that out. That's about as long as a siege thing. At this stage, if we examine the losses right now... Oh, sorry, I didn't have the production tab open. If we're going to examine the losses right now, and this is the Banshee speed upgrade, Hyperflight rotors, if I'm not mistaken. Like, that's a lot gone for our Zerg already, and he's already on 4 expansions. We're about to have our Terran, excuse me, taking his 5th and his 4th and his 5th at the same time. Simply based on the merit that they haven't been turned into orbital commands yet, I'm thinking they're going to be turned into planetary fortresses. There's scans coming out, and here we go. The Cyclones on the retreat from the next wave of Roaches, Ravagers, and Hydras. I feel like Midday just can't keep running straight into this, but at the same time, TriMaster runs straight into the Corrosive Bile. Blue Flame Hellions doing what damage they can, and it looks like this is actually an offensive that's working out fairly well for Midday. This is not half bad. Now, if he could get a full wraparound using Zerglings, that would be absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. But now this is all entirely cornered. I don't know if the remaining forces will be enough to actually crush this planetary, however. That's such a low DPS output group of units, if you will. The planetary fortress just moments away from finishing up. There's a Banshee here to keep it protected, however. 2 now. We now have the thrusters just about finished for those Banshees. And that's when we're going to see a very, very swift kick in the rear for speed. 4th gets established for TriMaster, and this is... I don't want to say this is totally absurd, but this is an amazing game that we have our Zerg up so high in supply, but TriMaster's been doing a good job of holding on thus far. Did he get too greedy and going for his 4th and 5th at the same time? I don't know, but we've got motion sensor towers falling just a little bit left and right here. Orbital command will be abandoned here. Instead, we're going to see those SCVs move to the 5th base. The 4th could have been taken as well, but it didn't happen. And I think that's what's going to really, really hurt TriMaster. He can't move back to this location so easily now that this is occupied by Zerg. The orbital command will land on the high ground. And this is looking crazier by the minute. Look at those Banshees just zipping around. It reminds me so much of beta fish, if that makes sense. It sounds so very strange to say that, but... they do look like beta fish. And now the planetary fortress is struggling for dear life. Roaches and Hydras are just too many. The SCVs are not... they're fully surrounding it for the repair, but it's just not enough in the end. Overseer joins this army, and now we've got a couple less Banshees out on the map. All of those SCVs are gone. And Midday says, ha, it's not so funny when it's your own workers, now is it? And he's going straight into the main now. Morphin those Hellbats, gonna try and get as many workers roasted in revenge as TriMaster, as we see him working his way kind of down to the natural with those Hellbats. Most of those drones do get away though. They have low HP nonetheless, and this is going to result in a lot of delayed mining time. Who is winning this game right now? Well, TriMaster's the one at 80 supply. He does have 3 bases, yes, to the 4 of Midday, but Midday's just got the higher army supply. Once he's done with cleaning up at home, I think he's going to come back here and push into his opponent's base. Those mules, SCVs going frantically crazy on the repair here. The Banshee's coming in, trying to save the 4th as well, but it's so close, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. There's just too much Zerg here. And now, we've got Midday pulling back home. His opponent's on 2 base, scrambling together to get 2 bases rebuilt. But it's also worth noting that I feel like TriMaster, in some ways, he's kind of slipped up on his macro just a little bit. I don't think he knows just what kind of a situation he's in at this moment. The new macro system is a little bit weird. It's gonna take a little bit of time to get used to for anyone who plays this game. So, you know, try not to just blame TriMaster's macro and everything. This is a game that hasn't even been out for a week yet. Although the Legacy of the Void alpha test maps have been available in the Heart of the Swarm beta test client. Those Banshees, they are very powerful. And I would say if they were going to make it to this base, it would be potentially forfeit, but it's not at that point yet. Oh boy, he's gonna have to take down some spores. He's going for workers instead, but there's too much static here. Midday's just got too much at this location for TriMaster to deal with. And he's building more behind it. But what about this base? It's a completely different story. Look at the harass, though. I like the viability of bringing yourself back in this game. TriMaster, he's got a potentially deadly force, a potentially game-ending force of just 4 Banshees. And yes, we've got Midday at 200-200, but what if he throws away that 200-200 and loses his entire bank? He doesn't have as much money saved as TriMaster, but I mean, most of that is minerals. Oh man, he's just gonna go straight in for the third. I like this move. It's so annoying to face off against this as Zerg, but it's gonna go. It really is. Excuse me. And TriMaster's getting away from this quite safely. Now behind this, what's the response from Midday? He's gonna go for an all-in. I don't think he knows just how far ahead of his opponent he really is at this stage. Here we are. The Hydras, the Roaches, the Vipers coming in, throwing down the Blinding Clouds. This tank force is now rendered completely useless except for these couple of tanks in the back doing so much work here. Blinding Clouds working against the Zerg force just a little bit, but in the end, the exchange is in favor of Midday, and he's crushing the natural ramp and every single worker and tank that comes down. Look at the Banshees as it's trying to shut this out, and it's just not happening. The main is going to go in, and we're going to see production get camped, but the 4 or 5 Banshees now coming in for the rescue. Scans going down on top of this Broad Roach force, now heading back, forth, left, right, everywhere else in between. And there's, oh boy, another scan coming down on top of these guys. It's been taken care of. And now, God, how many workers have been lost this far? What the hell am I watching? StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void or StarCraft 2 Kill Lots of Workers? Well, this command center lands, but I have a feeling it might not be alive for much longer. The SCVs, their lives are forfeit, but if they are forfeit in exchange for this command center, then they are forfeit fairly well. All it has to do is get picked up and move back into location again, and then it's good to go. That's a lot of Banshees. There's an Overseer now here to detect for these Hydras on the ground that want the kill on them, and TriMaster calls out the GG! Ladies and gentlemen, this was actually a very exciting game to watch. I mean, at many intervals, it seemed almost convincingly that we were going to see TriMaster just straight up lose the game, but he hung on for the longest time. It looks like, 17 minutes. What the hell is that in terms of Heart of the Swarm? What the hell is that in terms of Wings of Liberty? This is, I feel, the right pace that StarCraft 2 was always supposed to be. This is Legacy of the Void, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Benjamin Breaker Novotny. Please leave me some feedback on this cast in the comments below.